I sat across the table from a guy, and I was sitting there in a small suit because, that's all I had. And he asked me, what do you want to do in the future? I said, well, I think I'd love to be sitting across the table asking some young guy, pretty dumb questions about what he wants to do for his future. That sounds like a pretty good job. Yeah, I'll do what you're doing. That looks pretty easy.
You said that? Or you thought that? You
that's
said
what
that.
I said.
Welcome to Yaro's podcast, where you'll discover the stories behind world-class performers, business builders, and enlightened leaders.
A brief intro to my guest today. His name is Fred Schebesta, the co-founder of Finder.com, a comparison shopping helpful content website that will guide you to make the best decision and save money with things like choosing a credit card, personal loan, insurance, and also many other decisions. And it's become a very well-known website in Australia and expanding globally. I've started to see it show up in Canadian searches here where I'm in Canada. And Fred himself is someone I knew from a long time ago, back in the early days when I was knee-deep in learning search engine optimization for my blog and my teaching business. Fred was doing something similar with his SEO agency, which was the starting point, you could say, for Finder, because he did begin the first ever version of his business, creditcardfinder.com.au, there. What I really love about this story, though, and why I think you should pay attention, Fred has taken a business model that I think a lot of people understand, a lot of people apply. Essentially, build a website, fill it with helpful content, and then drive traffic to affiliate offers, maybe do some advertising eventually once you get the traffic. But it's really all about providing helpful content and then ranking well in Google and being the best answer to a question. And they've taken that to scale. I think that's why this podcast is something you should definitely listen to, because frankly, I don't have many guests on my show who can say that A, they have a personal net worth of over $170 million, that's Australian dollars, I think, though, and a business itself that's gone over to do, several hundred million in valuation and growing still. So it's a bit of an outlier, a unique case study, and I think especially because Fred was quite transparent in this interview, you're going to get some unique insights into the mindset of a person who's in charge of that size company, even though it's still essentially a content business. So I hope you enjoy today's episode with Fred Schebesta. Here it is. Hello, this is Yaro, and welcome to an interview. And today I'm excited to talk to a guest who I have to say popped up in my feed from a very compelling headline. And it was from a Business Insider article. It's a big number. I'm going to just say hello, first of all, to my guest before I talk about numbers to make sure he's okay with me talking about numbers. So Fred Schebesta, hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yara. I'm a long-time listener from your podcast and a long-time follower of you. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Now, Fred, as I was just saying, you've got a big claim to fame now, but I feel like when I first heard your name, and this is what was interesting to me, because I was reading this article on Business Insider last year, 2019. It was like, Finder co-founder Fred Schebesta has debuted on the Young Rich list with 193 million fortune, right? And I'm like, I know that guy. That name really stands out to me. And then, of course, I dug into our LinkedIn connections and even found an email exchange from a while ago. And I think back then you were working on an SEO agency, and obviously I was blogging and writing a bit about SEO, so we had some kind of interaction. How does it feel when you have an article like this published about yourself with that kind of title?
I think for, 17 years of real hard work and a bit of luck in there, but you make your own luck. It's a tribute to all the crew that have been with me. Frank, my co-founder, Jeremy's been there from the start. I think that's where it goes out to. It's not just me. It's really the crew that have made Finder and what it is today. And there was a company before that as well, and all those crew that, came with me on that journey, and it's a tribute to them.
Mm. Yeah, it's great to hear that, because there's a lot that goes into a company, not just the headline. For those who don't know, what exactly is Finder? They probably do know, but just in case they don't.
It's a comparison service. So our vision is to better all the world's decisions. So you come onto Finder, if you want to compare from VPNs to broadband to loans to insurance, whatever it may be, we write, we have a very, very strong editorial team, and we compare all the different products out there, and so that you can make a better deal by choosing one of those, because you've been informed as to what's going on. Mm-hmm. And we've started rolling this out all around the world. So in Canada as well, Yara, so you can check it out.
I wanted to tell you, Fred, I have seen Finder show up in my search results lately, and I was like, is it like, is it a coincidence? What's going on here? So.
And that's interesting you say that, because, people have started to say, when they sort of understand the story, they start to see it more, and they realize that's what, we've been doing, and they sort of dig into it. And a lot of people start to go, wow, there's so much here. They dig in further and they realize the journey we're trying to be on, and hopefully more people start to do that around the world. And we're really on a mission. So it's intense right now.
That's exciting. If you have the Canadian office, I'd love to pop in and say hello, but we'll talk about that another time. You're obviously Aussie born and raised, I think. That is my next question. So Sydney, went to school, grew up, university, everything like that?
Yeah, I went to school here in Sydney. Sydney's always been, I guess the most international city of Australia, because it's got that real connection to LA. You can have one flight, and that's been there for a long time. And the airport is, an international airport. So that brings a lot of exposure that way. I went to university. I studied actuarial studies and computer science. I didn't actually finish either of those. I got a finance degree at Macquarie University, but I learned a lot, through that. I kind of, the way I sort of think about the journey of where I got to was from a mastery of coding, which I learned from university, but I applied it on the internet as opposed to applying it, in the languages that they taught us. I took every idea that the university gave me, and I basically translated that as best I could to the internet where, relevant. And, I think that mastery over many, many years of coding and things like that, that's what has sort of led to building Finder. That's what sort of brought that about. It's one of those, that's the way I see it. That's what I think got me here.
Well, I'd love to connect the dots, because obviously, like you said, there's been previous companies, previous teams. So when you were in university, and even with those two subjects you never finished degrees with, as a young man, were you thinking, I'm going to start a business, or did you see, I'm going to get a job in finance? I work in Sydney in the financial district. Was there a plan, or was it more playing it by ear and see what interests me?
I actually started a company when I was at university. So, the agency started there. We were building websites and selling them. And I actually, I did go for some job interviews. I went for actually a job interview with Sun Microsystems. I mean, that's an old company. They invented Java. I don't know if they got bought by Oracle eventually. But I sat across the table from a guy, and he said, one of his questions was, and I was sitting there in a small suit because, that's all I had. And he asked me, what do you want to do in the future? I said, well, I think I'd love to be sitting across the table asking some young guy, pretty dumb questions about what he wants to do for his future. That sounds like a pretty good job. Yeah, I'll do what you're doing. That looks pretty easy.
You said that, or you thought that?
That's what I said.
Okay, cheeky.
And I don't know if that went down so well. So I didn't get a job at Sun Microsystems, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. Another thing happened. I was studying actuarial studies, and I came to the lecturer, and I said, I don't really. I went to them after, and I said, I don't really know. What's going on here? And the lecturer said, yeah, I know. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, if it's that obvious, where would this lead me from a career perspective? And he goes, well, Fred, you're going to be the one that talks to the clients. And so I said, oh, I see what's going on here. So that sort of, I realized that it probably wasn't the journey for me, and I changed course. And I realized potentially, number one, I have my own ideas, and I back myself, and I put my money behind them, and I go for it. So I don't mind working for other people's vision as well, but I tend to enjoy, and I do that all the time as well inside Finder and what we do. But I think I much prefer in innovating and creating that, and that's my best place to be. Whereas you take a business, an existing business, and I don't really understand the context or things like that, where I can't really change anything. I'm not so good in that environment. And so there was another time I was, to give you another story, I don't know, Yara, if you want to, I'm just sharing some of my past stories.
Please riff.
I used to work, my first job, I used to work as a kitchen hand in the kitchen, and we had a team meeting, and I said to him, the manager said, okay, is there anything else? I said, yeah, I've got an idea on how we can sell more chips. I said, we should salt the chips. He goes, why should we sell the chips? I said, well, we'll sell more drinks. And he goes, maybe you should get back to clean the dishes. And I said, okay, I see what's going on here. And yeah, I didn't think that was probably, again, maybe a signal of maybe I shouldn't be. I'm not the best operator. I'm probably better at coming up with some
right.
ideas on what to do.
You want the decision-making power, at least, to test ideas. At that time, did you have any role models? Your parents, were they ever entrepreneurial, or aunts or uncles or anyone, or, a mentor, anything to look at, or were you kind of winging it?
My parents were doctors, so they kind of are their own sort of small business in and of themselves, but they didn't run a big company. My mum had a secretary, and that was it at the time. Eventually, she went on to be an entrepreneur, and she built her business up after 25 years, which is interesting, another story in and of itself. My next door neighbor he ran a small business, and he sold computer programs, and I sort of, I looked at how he ran his business, and I found that interesting. But over time, I think I've got a lot of mentorship through certain people that I would go to at times, and then I would change, or I'd read books and study the way people did things. A lot of the time, unfortunately, I didn't. In Australia, there's a sort of a vacuum of strong entrepreneurial leaders. There just doesn't have the generations of entrepreneurs that you can learn from. Whereas, America has had many, many generations of big businesses. In England as well, in the UK, they've had that tenure, that time that's just been around a long time. And so there are people who've passed on the knowledge and the wisdom of running companies. So a lot of the time I'd learn through videos and go to conferences or go and meet special people at certain times. Just had to go and hustle, really. Most of my learning, I'd say, is through videos, which is kind of strange. Those information products. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got, I learned about you, Yarrow, was through, you had information products, you had videos and things like that. And that's how I learned. It was just the way you had to do it, because the actual people themselves who you want to learn from aren't in Australia. It's, it's the end of the earth. It's a tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific, and we've got this
tiny
couple of people. There's a couple of people there, and that's about it. Well, on the world stage, in terms of population, it's a small place.
Geography, no, but yeah. It is funny you say that. I'm thinking back to my own experience growing up in Brisbane, and I don't recall a specific mentor besides a Richard Branson through his book, and like you, it was reading books, and then eventually, obviously, as the internet grew, more online courses and videos and so on. But there wasn't like the local celebrity entrepreneur like we have today, where we all know who now there's the Fred Schebestas of the world that people can learn about. So can you take us forward though with your story? So the university studies don't strictly lead to starting a business, but you said you were taking some technical skills you were developing and then applying it to the internet. So when you say that, were you did you just go straight to an agency, building websites or software for companies, or were you freelancing? What was the starting point?
I just build websites for people. It's pretty simple. Probably not the smartest of services, and in terms of business models, it's not very scalable. It's very people intensive, but I didn't know any of the wiser about how to build a scalable business. But from that, I learned the second company, with Finder, we learned, what is a scalable company? How do you not be involved from a people perspective day to day? Finder runs 24/7 by itself. And so I made that mistake, pretty brutally. And I think I actually remember I bought an information product about internet marketing. I think it's one of the originals. I can't remember the guy's name.
Corey Rudel, or that was
it was a long time ago. Like a real one of those original ones. It's like the $1 million conference or something. I don't know.
Okay, old school.
I can see the guy's face, but super old school. I'm talking like the most old school you've ever imagined. And I bought the DVDs. I think I paid like $1,000. And that was the beginning. I realized, I saw how they run their business and the scalability. And I realized then, okay, we need to use these skills we developed. Instead of building someone else's site, we need to build our own. And that's when we started experimenting, right? So we built like a poker site. We built a Mother's Day present site, a Sudoku site. And one of them was the credit card comparison site called Credit Card Finder. And each of those sort of, had a certain amount of performance, but the poker site was, a fad at the time. Texas Hold'em was big, and then it kind of died off. Sudoku, you can't really make money out of. Mother's Day presents is only one time a year, but the credit card comparison was something that was all the time. And we just focused on that and realized that all of our skills and all the things we've learned in the past could be applied to this business. It was, I guess, something that we worked on the side, and then we sold the agency, and then we came back to it after 2.5 years, and we just focused on it full time. And I'd say the first 4.5 years, probably even more, we didn't really think up a strategy. All we did was execute the playbook we had from our clients, from what we've done in the past. Like, we just didn't really have to think, we just executed. And so it made the company grow very, very fast.
So just to clarify, because I feel like I'm missing a few dots here. So you went from finishing university, starting essentially a website building agency. You're building these websites for clients, which is forcing you to learn, I'm assuming, some basic search engine optimization just to get a bit of traffic for them and basic website building. Then you discover some internet marketing training, and that opens your eyes to this idea of building. It sounded like you're building niche content sites back in the old affiliate kind of days. You build a niche site, make a bit of affiliate money, then move on to the next one and the next one, and hope they all make even $100 a month or something like that. That was like mid 2000s. I think that was kind of popular.
Yep, big time.
Yeah,
we've got 1,000 domains still in the holster.
All those ideas.
Yeah,
yeah. And then it sounds like you saw Credit Card Finder as the one that was taking off, but then you're realizing that's potentially a deeper, like you can go into that niche and really dive into it. And obviously you probably discovered the power of choosing a really monetizable topic, one that has an audience that's searching and looking to spend money, and you could, service that. Now, you keep saying we as well when you're answering these questions, Fred. So I'm assuming, Fred graduates, then you met, I know you've got a partner, a business partner who's been with you, not just with Finder, but with your agency as well. So when you're saying we, how did the team grow? Did they all come into Finder, or did you a two-man show when you had the agency? What did it look like back then?
Yeah. So who's the we? So when I started the agency, I actually started with another business partner, Adam, and he wanted to go a different way. So we parted ways. And then Frank, who's, with me today still, we've been working since 2003. So that's 17 years. He came and joined me in the agency, and we built that into a real business, and I think that's the partnership we've had for a very long time, and we're really effective. And I think then Jeremy joined us at the start in 2009, and that's when we really started to build Finder.
And what were you doing? Like, were there roles defined for each of you guys? Are you all doing a bit of everything, or?
That's an interesting one. Frank he started very much, he came from an accounting company. So he came from a big investment firm called A&P and also BNP Paribas, which is a bank, a Parisian bank. And, he came from that investment mindset. He did accounting. So he's always looked at sort of come from the finances, the analytics. And then he moved and really understood and learned marketing, and particularly internet marketing. And internet marketing is actually a very analytical business, particularly when you buy ads. So he mastered those skills. He learned a lot about coding and learned about developing. And, we didn't really overlap in our skills. Apart from, I guess, the finance, we both understood that. So we kind of did, separate things. I sort of looked at the technology, and I looked at the product and things like that in the beginning. And then over time, actually, we've sort of, particularly in this business, in the previous business, I think, we were just learning. But in this one, we started in similar roles. And, I think if you were to talk about today, which I think is kind of interesting as well, is, in the beginning, I think I'm quite good in sort of 1 to 25 people, or like getting that initial start. And then after that, Frank's very strong at, when, you're scaling from 25 to, 100, 200, 300, and, really has that management ability. Whereas I think my skill is probably more like a leader as opposed to a manager itself, which is, again, they don't kind of overlap, but they're not, in conflict with each other. So you have that space. But I think over time, we've reinvented ourselves many, 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 many times because, we keep hiring people into the roles that we were doing in the business. I fired myself probably, 45 times, which is fair. And, I should do that because the crew here are like way better at executing things and doing things than I am. No. I'm pretty average.
I'm sure you're good at some things. You sold Freestyle Media is the agency, right, that we keep talking about here. So can you maybe take us through that process? Because I'd love to talk about some more about Finder too, but I really feel like Freestyle Media laid the foundation for a lot of what Finder became. So what point did you decide you want to sell it, and why did you not want to keep it going, and what did it look like? Did you make enough money to retire at that point? What were you at with Freestyle Media?
Yeah, so we sold that company for 1.3 million. So it was, for us, it was more money I've ever seen in the entire world. And I think I was 26 at the time. And that was a good business that at the time, but it commoditized. Digital agencies were all the fad. And so we were like, okay, let's go and grow, move into a bigger group and we'll go and do bigger things. And so we did that. And that company actually still exists today and it still is carrying on. But I think for us, we realized while we were in there, maybe this is not, the direction we want to go in the future. It's more, we've been thinking up these other ideas and we've been trying to, we want to build something where we're not doing a service. We want to do something where we've built a product.
No clients,
that's a major
right?
change. Well, we have clients, lots of them, partners and customers, because we have, I guess, a marketplace. We've got both sides, but I think it's not a service. That's the difference. Okay. It's not like you have to trade hours for money. And that's where we change. That's the business model that we were keen to adapt towards. And that was only a realization. That took a long time. That took probably 7 years to realize. I think I saw a lot of internet entrepreneurs and a lot of people build a lot of great businesses where they weren't selling services. And we learned a hard lesson from that and then vowed never to sell our services ever again, which is nice. And that was a key decision at the time, and I think that changed our lives a lot. And, it forced us to learn different skills. It forced us to think differently and value different things. So
I guess you would have realized what kind of roles you wanted going forward with the next business and how your life would look like in terms of time, even, not beholden to maybe phone calls or deadlines driven by delivering a service. Is it correct to say that you guys, straight after leaving or selling Freestyle Media, you were like, was it all three of you going, let's start the next project and do the things now that we know we do want to do and not do the things we now know we don't want to do? Was that it? Or did you have a break maybe in between and did the classical travel around the world thing as every Australian does at some point?
Yeah. So we spent 2.5 years doing an earn-out. And so it was just Frank and I who did that. Mm-hmm. But then after that, Jeremy joined us. So he didn't do that earn-out part. And we took a break, I guess, towards the end of that. We didn't work nowhere near as hard as we used to. And I guess we were a bit demotivated by the whole thing, just that company's management wasn't necessarily we didn't like the way, they didn't sort of vibe with our sort of management style. And that's okay, but it's their company, and they wanted to run it how they wanted to run it. That's okay. I think that was kind of the break, there. And we sort of did a lot of thinking during that time. I traveled to Chicago because I won the Young Direct Marketer of the Year. Yeah. And that opened my mind and opened my eyes to America. I was like, wow, look at this country. It's incredible. We did a lot of thinking for 2.5 years. And that sort of brewed up this real passion, desire to go and create something incredible for the next company. And I think that was good, that break.
Mm. Was there a sitting on a bunch of couches, exchanging ideas kind of moment, and then suddenly you're like Finder, or how did the idea generation go?
No, because we started Finder in 2006, right? And so it had already been, the credit card Finder website was up and running because it was an experiment from our previous company, but we didn't sell that company. We kept that company.
So you got to keep creditcardfinder.com, but the agency went to them.
Correct. So we'd already thought the idea, and we went through the same, similar ideation process, but yeah, basically the way we've come up with that name is we got a Google keyword list, exported it, and I literally just typed into a domain name site the exact match keywords of every single credit card keyword there was. Mm-hmm. And creditcard.com.au was taken, all right, creditcards.com.au taken, credit card comparison was taken, which went all the way down, and then the sixth one was credit card finder, and that wasn't taken, so I registered that, and that was the site.
Done.
So and I guess that brings us to another moment is when we used to be Home Loan Finder, Credit Card Finder, all these kind of domain names.
Did you do something with them though? Like, did you build websites, write articles, and so on? So you just like traditional content marketing strategy.
Correct. Yep.
And that was you guys sitting there writing, or?
In the beginning, I did a bit of writing and, I outsourced a little bit, but, I was in the very, very start, I did all parts of it. I even coded it. I, built the links. I did everything. I'd write articles. And then slowly over time, we created a structure, and we followed as a book called The E-Myth that I'm sure, every entrepreneur's probably read, but it just helped us a lot. It just spelled out exactly what we need to do and why.
And all those sites made money? Like, was it a case of Google sending you traffic and affiliate sales started coming through and away you go?
Yeah, it's small amounts, with all these things. It's small wins, but they all add up, and you got to keep building it,
Mm-hmm. And it's obviously a big difference between a few small wins on a handful of finance niche websites to what Finder is today. So, there's so many different phases to this too. I'm assuming, at some point, given what you just said too with the E-Myth, you're thinking, I can't be the one writing every article, and I can't be the one coding every website and doing backlink development. And
right.
So then you think, I need to hire a specialist at SEO, or even one writer and one link grower. Is that how you kind of thought? And then you had to balance the cash flow to hire them with the growth of the site. Is that kind of the balancing act you have to do?
Yeah, dividing up the roles into actual roles, definitely. And then, managing cash flow throughout that 100%. We used to have very strict budgets, and I'd message what the budget is, what we can spend, we can't spend. And, I've always been very mindful of cash flow, and it's just something I look at all the time. And I think that's because of our agency days. We just didn't have much money. So it was absolutely brutal, getting cash in and making sure it was flowing. So I've always been, from those very early days, mindful like that.
And now you're in the helping people save money with their finance decisions. So there's obviously a correlation with all of this.
100%. And I think that translates well. Being frugal and teaching people with content and doing them all around the world. I think it helps people a lot. It's a social mission.
Okay. Could you take us forward though? So how did the team grow, and at what point did you get Finder.com? I'd love to just keep how does the journey go?
In the beginning, we were just doing credit cards for, I'd say, a good 4 years. Yeah,
that's
which is really, it's a long time to focus. And then we started, home loans and savings and life insurance, and we just kept spreading. And then I think about 2013, we bought Finder.com.au, which is the Australian version, and we consolidated the domains, which is, from an SEO perspective, that's super high risk.
Dangerous. Yeah. I've just gone through a domain name change, and I've lost half my traffic, so I know what that must have felt like.
Yeah. So and we were living and dying by that. And then we've expanded as well then we mastered different channels to get traffic, and we started building better products. So we hired developers. We never had developers for a very long time. We were just running lots and lots of content and making small little hacks. And then I think, where it changed is when we had that one domain, and then the moment in time, and I remember it was probably 2014, around then, we made our first TV ad.
Oh, wow. Fun.
And that was the moment when I realized, what are we going to say?
Yeah,
what's the company called? Right? You can't call it Credit Card Finder, Home Loan Finder. You got to call it something. So that's when we got the Finder.com.au domain name. And we built the jingle, which, I think everyone knows today. And that was an experience. I can tell you the story around that. It's, lots and lots of failed attempts to get that. But when we were running the ad, we made an in-house ad, and we're going to just put it on the TV. I think we spent like 10 grand making it. We hired someone in-house. I wrote the copy myself and put a little voiceover to it. But I realized when we were doing it, the problem was, what if someone doesn't pick up that it's finder.com.au? What if someone types in finder.com? Because whenever, people hear websites, they just type in .com.
Of course. What was finder.com before you guys had it?
So it was, it was a Russian dating site.
Of course, that makes sense.
All sorts of things. But it was owned by one of those squatters.
Oh, no.
That, I think anything.com owns it, and something like that. Those guys that have a list of domain names that they own, they're a super high premium. And, that was the moment we thought, well, we've always wanted to go overseas. And, my trip overseas before just opened my mind to it. But we thought, maybe we should broaden our vision and not just be an Australian company, but be a global comparison business. And, deep down, that decision, pretty monumental one to make. And it really it was the moment when we decided, I think we paid $300,000 US for Finder.com.
Wow.
And that was when the Australian dollar was about 54 cents. So we probably paid about 600. Yeah. You paid 600,000 Australian or 300,000 US. And there was, some other fee involved as well. Anyway, but that's a significant, decision and a massive investment, right? Like, you don't get anything from that if you buy the domain name. You just get a domain name and that's it.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to change your website to this new domain and potentially lose some traffic or some rankings there.
Right. And massive amounts of risk, massive amounts of investment and planning. And the other thing you got to remember when you go back in time, and this is, I think, important to realize, is Finder's a bootstrap company, right? So it's not like we raised up a whole lot of money and we could just make an investment like that and spend it. And if it didn't work out, whatever. We're trading off our own cash balance, right? Our cash flow.
How was your profit you just spent?
It was a pretty big call.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of paying yourself a dividend, we were reinvesting. And I think that's the moment when we started to look outside Australia, and we sort of got the business in 2016 to a point where a lot of the roles were, like in the EMIF, they all had titles, they all had people in them, they were doing a great job. And we sort of hit a point where, I personally did, I hit a point where, I wasn't really needed in the company anymore. All my roles had been taken, the processes and systems had been done, set up, and then it was running. It was a beautiful Australian company. Mm. But that just, for us, I remember the moment we just said, look, I just don't think that's what we were trying to achieve in our lives. If you look back and, you ask yourself, if I was to die today, how would you feel? And if that was the end, and that's what I learned from selling that first agency, is that if you don't set your sights, high enough, then, you're probably never going to get there. And that was fine for that agency and that taught us a lot. But I think this one was about, what do you as a person want to do? And going overseas and building a global company, I think that's always what that sort of scratches that itch. Mm-hmm. And if I turn around and look backwards now, it's, we've done a lot of those things, but that was the moment where things really changed. Mm. You've got people where you're hiring people and they're not actually working in the company, they're working on the company for the next, to build bridges and systems and processes and scale them around the world.
Yeah.
And you're doing stuff which, it's all cost, but it's not, you have to basically overhaul and reinvent yourself again.
Right, because you're opening up Canada and Canada's got no presence and you have to write Canada articles. So it's like starting from scratch, a whole new company almost, right?
Yeah, I got in 2016. I remember I was sitting with Frank and I said to him, man, I feel really bad. We were sitting in a coffee shop and I said, I feel really bad. I don't think I do anything here anymore. And he said, that's fine, man. Just stand by your desk and people will talk to you. It's okay. You're like the grandfather. Just chill. It's okay, fine. Chill.
You're our mascot now. Yeah. I have a couple of questions though, because I feel like I'm missing a few steps, or at least some clarification in my brain. Is it to get from this company where you were doing sort of niche credit card sites, and then, like we talked about earlier, you're making some affiliate income and it's slowly increasing, and then you reach the point where you can spend 600,000 Australian dollars on a domain name, which means obviously that compounding grew, to reach the point today where you're in a Business Insider article talking about, hundreds of millions of dollar valuation company. Is it, I know the answer is no, but maybe you could clarify, is it as simple as getting more traffic and selling more because of that traffic of, affiliate relationships, maybe some advertising as well, partnerships, like you said? Is it just the numbers get bigger for everything you do, or is there something else going on to reach that kind of size company?
Well, yes, I think to some extent, there's a certain stage, yes, where you can just get more traffic and you can sell more partners. But the problem what happens then is when you take a simple business and you scale it, it doesn't just, think of it like this. If you were still wearing the clothes that you're wearing when you were a teenager, or like you were, 7 years old, like you'd still be able to like play, games and do your life as you would normally, but you'd be kind of restricted. And you kind of grow out of all that stuff you had in the past. So you get major issues around the system that runs, say, even the partnerships, or the system that that holds the website up. Mm. Just the sheer hosting, like structure and framework, it just, falls apart at a certain point. I remember our site was going down literally almost twice daily. And, we would just call up. I remember in the beginning, we used to make a mistake on the website. We'd call up the hosting company and say, hey, man, can you just reset everything? Just wind it back a bit. Yeah, wind it back. We made a mistake. Cool. Thanks very much. They'd wind it back. We're back online. Thanks very much, And we'd be down for hours and no one would care. Now, we can't be down for hours. Like we're looking at, we need the uptime just because of the sheer numbers of people and the amount of money that we're spending. It all stacks, right? So I'd say it's partially do more of what you're doing, but then on the other side, I'd say a lot of it is dealing and reinventing yourself, your systems, and your processes continuously. When you're in a certain size company, I don't know if they talk about different numbers of people, but once you hit there's a thing called Dunbar's Law. When you hit 150 people plus, then just, if you want to communicate one message out to everyone, that's not a simple thing to do anymore, because let's say 2/3 of the people in Inside Finder are asleep. And,
you can't just send a Slack message and they all get it. That doesn't work.
Yeah, eventually, but if that's only a certain amount of context of that message, right? If you want to say something quite complicated, and so, you got to deal with that. I think in the small vision of it, yes, what you're saying is correct. But what goes along with that, I think no one realizes the extreme amount of challenge that's involved with scaling and getting alignment, pivoting, implementing a strategy. Let me give you an example, right? So let's say you've got 30 minutes to talk to the whole company. Let's just say, for example. Mm-hmm. What are you going to say in those 30 minutes? Like, you can't talk about everyone. You can probably talk about, 2 or 3 things max. And so you're not going to talk about absolutely everything. You're going to talk about the 2 or 3 things that really matter right now. And that doesn't mean that everything else is not important. It's just that these things are very important. If we achieve these as a company, we're going to get there. And so you've got to work out very precisely what are those 3 things you're going to say. You can't just, say everything. You've got to be, and that's the work, that's the time, that's the growth and the learning that you need to do in order to continue to scale and learn. So management and leadership and communication skills are that's where I've done so much learning on over time.
It's interesting because, from the perspective of, say, a small business, often it's like, just send me another 100 customers so I can make another $1 million a year, and then another 100 customers, and then another 100 customers, and it's just like algorithmic numbers. But what you're really saying here is that happens, but then because of the sheer multitude of variables that are getting combined, the number of staff, the amount of traffic, the number of partners, it just creates so many layers of potential communication issues. That alone is probably the biggest challenge to deal with, like the management of it, not just the execution of it. So, but I know we only have another 5 or so minutes, and I am really curious to also ask you about the future. Besides, clearly your vision is for Finder to answer the problems, answer the questions around the entire world. And now that you've had a solid presence in Australia and expanding globally, but you're doing some other stuff. You're also well known now in the cryptocurrency world, which might surprise some people. So I'm curious, how did that happen and why did you decide to get into it? And what is it? I know you have an exchange in Australia, and is that connected to Finder in any way?
Yeah, so we set up Finder Ventures, and we started experimenting with, just like we did with the other company, what are sort of the 3 things, if you're going to start a company today, that we should get involved with and we should learn about. And we thought, blockchain is pretty important. So we made an investment into that, and we decided to go and master that. And part of that is cryptocurrency. So we were just learning and understanding the whole environment. And so that was one of the reasons why we went into that. We've also built an application that kind of automates your comparisons and tells you really smart things. So you connect your bank account up and to it, and it basically checks all your health insurance, your energy, and those kind of things, and tells you if you can save money. So that's another sort of, I guess, it's in the field of automation and potentially towards AI. And we're thinking, what could we do in the future around those things?
Right.
Yeah, fintech and banking, and because I think banking and those kind of things is really changing as well. What is a bank in the future? I think there will be entire banks that are headless, so you can't even speak to them because they all work through third parties. Mm. There'll be Uber is trying to build a bank to some extent, but they probably have a bank behind them, and that would be the bank of the future, where they master fraud and and all the things that they do in the background, and leave the customer relationship to someone else. So I think that's where the world's changing, and that's where we're trying to make some investments and build some services and products with Finder that will help people, make decisions and save money in their lives.
And what about you personally, Fred? Like, I'm curious, did you ever expect to have, that kind of personal wealth, and what are you motivated personally to do? How has life changed since that new, this kind of a size company has now become, you and your success story?
I think I've had to reinvent myself quite a few times, and that's definitely been very challenging. And I think I've done a lot of work around figuring out what I'm good at. And, I think my purpose is to inspire and challenge people to do great things. And that's sort of, the kind of place I'd love to start from. And then I think there's many ways in which that happens, but I can see myself doing, and building Finder for quite a few more years, because I think we've only just begun. And I think we're in the precipice of some tectonic plates actually changing, and well placed to actually make the investments and build the products and services and help people all around the world. And I think help them with just really clean, modern banking and insurance and lending services like that, share trading, investing. I think Finder can be an instrumental part that people day to day use for their financial life, I guess. And I think we're well placed to do that. And I'm really excited to build stuff like that. That's fun to me. Yeah, definitely where I think we're going to go. So I'm up for that. I love building new things. I like bringing things from that aren't created into the reality of the world.
And it's cool. Considering, we're over a decade, more than that, you've been doing kind of the same thing, not the exact same thing. Obviously, there's massive growth with 2 companies, 1 exit, but you still got the fire to go out there and sort of use content to answer people's problems. So that's awesome. Besides the obvious, I know we can find more about Finder by going to finder.com. Are there any other, websites you want to throw out, or any links or any projects you want to mention?
I think this app is a big deal. And I think it'll be amazing. I think, we've got HiveX with our cryptocurrency, which is kind of cool. But, follow me on LinkedIn, and I put out a lot of stuff there. And you can, if people are interested. If they're not, that's fine as well. But hopefully I'm doing some pretty cool stuff.
I follow you there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's so interesting. I think I remember listening to your podcast and reading your articles, and I loved how transparent you were. And that was incredible. It really opened my mind to how you could build a really genuine business. So I have a lot of respect for your work, Yarrow. So I'm sure your listeners here as well would attribute that as well. And I guess, I would say you've contributed in a way to what I've created.
Oh, that's amazing to hear, Fred. I mean, I'm in some ways super motivated by what you've done. Like, I want to get on board a bigger train too. So I love hearing your success story with Finder. But yeah, I appreciate the comment. I've been doing this for as long as you've been doing yours too. So, it's a labor of love. But Fred, we're out of time. So I would love to ask you so many more questions, but I know you're a busy guy, sort of. So thank you for answering some questions, telling us the Finder story, and good luck with it. Sounds like it's only getting started.
No worries. I appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully we're going to create some pretty incredible things. Thank you.
Hey, this is Yarrow, and thanks for being a listener. Now, in this episode, if there was something you think could benefit a friend, a family member, a colleague, maybe an entrepreneur that maybe it was something to do with getting traffic or launching a product or just coming up with an idea, make sure you send this episode to them. It could change the trajectory of their life, and I'd really appreciate the introduction to my show. Also, if you're not a subscriber, make sure you click that subscribe button, whether it's in Google or Apple or YouTube or Spotify, and you'll get my episodes as I release them. Thanks again for being a listener.
Thanks for listening to Yarrow's podcast. For more episodes, visit yarrow.blog and subscribe on iTunes or Google.